Another important aspect about website design that is often overlooked is the art of spacing. So we've talked about how we can get color and the right fonts used throughout our site, but if things aren't spaced properly, none of that really matters. So right here, for example, I drug a panel in from our panel section. This is from the benefits, and it looks good, but I think we could probably do better. So the key that we're going to be covering here again is spacing used throughout columns, widgets, and how it looks on the different types of devices. So first we have here is a 1 row, 3 columns. And I'm going to come into the row settings, layout properties. So it's very key that you understand really most of these settings and how they work. The width. Right now we have a maximum width set. This 800 is what is eliminating this box from going farther. I'm going to make it 1,000. And now you can see we are much wider. 1,000. If I click don't, it's going to be closer to around 1,200. So I'm going to again, just leave it at the max width of 1,000. Alignment, we're center. That's good. Height, I can set a minimum height. Now, the width and the spacing are two different. The width and the height can only be set if a row is within another row. So if let me clone this, let me drag it out onto its own row. So it's on its own row. If I come in here to row settings, layout, I can set the minimum height, but I cannot set the minimum width. Now I can still accomplish the same thing by using padding or margin. I can accomplish that, but just so you know, if you don't see some of these settings, it's because a row needs to be within another row. So again, we set the max width, alignment is center, the height. Sometimes this is, when this is necessary, do you see how this is longer than these two? And when I get onto other devices, you don't see it here as much because of the white background. But if we had, a shadow effect around the whole area or just a number of things, it's going to cause problems. So what I could do, and this would be more on the column setting, but within the column of the row, I could say the minimum height needs to be, let's try 250. So if I make it, or 225, and if I come into the background, I'm going to apply a shadow. Now, if I came here and I applied a shadow, it potentially on different size devices isn't always going to stay that minimum height, and you want to often set it to the same as the others. It's just a good safe way to make sure that nothing ever looks weird on a different device. Okay, so back to this. Spacing. For the row, spacing is the space between columns. So never use none through extra large. Just don't. You can't control them from device to device, and I'm going to demonstrate that in a second. But I'm going to come to custom, and I like to live around 25 pixels. Okay, so that's 25 pixels in between. Margin. Margin is space outside of the green. Padding is space within the green. Margin, again, always use custom. If I make this 25, it adds space there. If I make it down here, you're not really even going to see it, but it pushed down the content. Padding, again, is within the green. If I make it 5 on the left and the right, you can see it's pushing in 5% on the left and the right. My suggestion is whatever you do to the left, you often want to do to the right. When it's a row or really a widget, most of the time you want to mimic the left and the right to keep yourself in alignment. You can switch between pixels and percentage. You don't have to use one or the other. There's really no benefit. The top and the bottom, obviously. Now, what I can also do is if I actually move it like this, you can see I'm making it bigger or smaller. Let's just make it really small initially. If we look at the row settings, the padding has 0. It's hard for me to demonstrate this, but if I make it bigger, you can see it is actually changing. So you can expand the top and the bottom manually, and it will calculate here, and then I can override it at any point within here. Okay, so spacing then comes down to what is it going to do on these different devices. So when I get down to the smaller monitor and then the tablet and then the phone, what I can do is any decision I make on one of these devices gets passed to the left. So we design it for the wide monitor and it goes across the board. But if I make a change on the smaller monitor, it will be passed to the tablet and the phone. If I do it on the tablet, it gets passed to the phone. Now I can always override those settings for that specific device, but let me show you how this works. So let's do something kind of crazy. Let's pad the sides 25%. If I go back to the large monitor, nothing has changed. If I go down to the tablet, it's changed. If I go down to the phone, you don't really see it changed because we're stacking this. But if I went to inline, you would definitely see the difference. That's right here. You can see how thin these are. Sorry, I had that second copy making it confusing. So again, anything I make a change here does not affect the other devices. Now I'm on the tablet, make this padding 5, and that'll take effect on the device to the left. How you know that it only affects the devices here and to the left is the fact that it's grayed out. You can see that I can override these. The reason why you never use none through extra large is you can't edit them from device to device. You have to use the custom mode. If I come to the minimum height, if we were using it, you could be able to set it. The minimum width, same thing. It is controlled from device to device. Let's come all the way back to here. So in our other video, we talked about font sizes and colors and so forth. What I'm going to do real quick is let's make this larger. So I'm going to make it, let's go with 16. So we're going 16 for the middle text. The text edit widget, you typically have to go into text settings. It's a little frustrating sometimes. All right, and then the header. Let's change it to 20. Let's actually do this. Let's do 600. Okay. So when we get, obviously that's going to change some things here, but let's update this back to our 5%. Sorry, not the margin, the padding. One thing I would suggest is when you're on the large monitor, you might want to pad the sides. It's not life or death. What's really kind of limiting us is the actual width that we have going on here. But I'm going to unpad the 5% here. When we get down to a monitor, where I like to live is at 2%. So on the monitor, the tablet, and the phone, I would be at least 2% padding on the left and the right. Now, I can control how wide the text is from device to device without affecting it. So now you can see by just moving these in and so forth, I can control it much better. Another thing I might not do, I want to do, I'm a fan of justification. So if I justify, you'll see the text comes together. Or essentially, it's like a newspaper. It goes to the very edge. They'll create little gaps where necessary. It looks a lot cleaner on a phone and on the smaller devices. Now again, that effect took all the way to here. Oops. But on our larger monitor, let's just bring our text in a little bit to keep that nice consistent look. And this one, let's bring it out. There we go. So down to the tablet. Now, I would definitely, tablets don't mind. 3 columns are often perfect. Where you get into trouble are 4 or more, and those you often want to stack. So I'm going to go inline here with the 3, but keep in mind that there's a lot of different size tablets, and if you're on an iPad mini, sometimes you don't want to be cramming all this text together, and you want to have it stacked like on a phone. So when in doubt, I suggest stacking rows. So within a column, again, responsive, I can stack it like so. You don't really want to, you just, again, don't, when in doubt, just stack it, because if things are crammed too much, it's just not easy to read. Now the phone. So forget that this is the other mode, or the other copy we had. So here we've got it passed all the way down to here. When we stack, so right now we do have our padding in effect here on the sides. Now I like around 4 or 5% for a phone is ideal. But the space between here and here is not margin or padding, but it's actually the spacing. So spacing is in between columns, and when you stack the columns, they're really the space in between them. So for example, let's make this 50, and you can see it added space. It's kind of hard. 100 versus 10 or 1. So again, if you want to control the space when you're stacking, you must be using custom spacing from the very beginning. If I left this on, for example, default or any of these others, I can't control it when it stacks. So almost every time, actually it should be a rule, every time you add a row and you have columns and eventually they're going to stack on top of one another, you need to set the custom spacing right from the get-go on your large monitor device. All right, I've kind of gone a little bit all over the place with this video. I just want to wrap it up with how this all works with widgets. It's pretty much all identical. So if I come into layout for this image, I can affect the margin just like I could on the row itself. Now padding, you don't have that control for a image widget. It's just one of the few. Let's go to this header. The header, I control the padding and the margin. The width, I can designate, a minimum or a maximum width and a minimum height. Alignment, this is something, again, if I want to come here and I want to align it left on this device, I absolutely can. My suggestion is when we're on a phone, center things. It just looks better. When you have everything centered, it looks better than if things are aligned left. So all the rules that are kind of applied at the row get passed on to the widgets when it comes to spacing, margin, and alignment. Hopefully you find this video helpful. Again, websites, the content itself needs space. You don't want everything riding on top of one another. You can do it. I would definitely do it through padding and margin because we can control it from the device to device. There is a spacer widget here, and if I drop it onto the page, I can control everything. But again, you can accomplish this through padding and margin as well. All right, if you have any questions on how spacing works within a Deco Network website, please do not hesitate contacting us. Thank you.